All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I know, Christopher, you confirmed that you can hear me, but I want to make sure again, if you can all hear me, if you could just please type in the group chat just to confirm. You could just say yes. Awesome. Thank you, Juan. All right. Thank you all again for joining and taking the time to join today's webinar. As you all know, my name is Erica Alfaro, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. So during the housing specialist certification training, housing specialists have mentioned that they work with clients who don't have income or have very little income. And we all know that income plays a huge part of being able to maintain housing. And we all know also that not having enough income may affect someone's ability to be able to keep paying their rent. So in the housing specialist certification training, we talk about housing stability and self-sufficiency, and employment can contribute to not only being able to maintain housing, but also being self-sufficient by not depending on HAPA funding for a long period of time. Today, we'll also be talking about benefits, and with me I have Gabby Rodriguez, who's a benefits specialist here at APLA Health and Wellness. She's been with APLA for 3 years, and prior to working with benefits, Gabby was a housing specialist for 2 years. So she has had the experience of working with housing clients like all of you are doing now. So before we proceed with the webinar, I do want to take care of a few housekeeping items. For those of you who are new to using Zoom, I wanted to introduce a few features that we encourage you to use. So first, I do recommend that you all minimize your screen. All you should see right now is the presentation slide. Also, if you scroll to the bottom of the presentation, you'll see a ribbon with various widgets. You have the widget for audio. This will give you the call-in information if you have not already called in. You do not have to call in to access the audio. Some of you are accessing audio from your computer. And also everyone's lines will be muted. If you heard some of your colleagues talking, I did mute all the lines just to ensure that that doesn't happen throughout the webinar while others join today. We also do encourage you to ask questions during the course of the webinar, and you'll see that there's a widget for a chat box. So in the chat box, some of you are already using it as you all responded to my question about audio. So please enter any questions that you may have throughout the webinar about benefits, about other information that we talk about today, and we'll be covering that at the end of the webinar or during the presentation. We also have closed captioning available in this webinar, so if you'd like to access closed captioning, you can click on the widget and it will turn green once it's been activated. I will be recording this webinar and I will make it available at a later time as I edit the closed captioning to ensure that all the spelling is correct. I'll be posting it into the Housing Specialist website, and again, I'll be sending an email out once that is available. So I'd like to acknowledge the Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department, also that we all know as HCID or HCIDLA, who has collaborated with APLA Health Shared Action to bring the Housing Specialist Certification Training Program for HAPA Housing Specialists in LA County. I also would like to thank Mireya Amador from Alliance for Housing and Healing for providing APLA Health Action with a wealth of information about the Getting to Work initiative that I'll be talking about with you today. And I'd also like to thank Gabby Rodriguez, benefits specialist from APLA Health and Wellness, that will be speaking with you all today about benefits. And last but not least, APLA Health Shared Action for developing and implementing the Housing Specialist Certification Training Program, supplemental workshops, and webinars. So this is the agenda for today. First, I'll be talking to you about the Getting to Work initiative and the lessons learned. And then I'll spend some time talking about how housing specialists can apply the lessons from the initiative. And lastly, I'll hand it over to Gabby, who will provide you a very brief benefits 101. She'll also be talking about benefits and employment and what happens to someone's benefits if they do decide to get back into the work field. All right, I also realize that I talk a little fast, so I'm gonna try not to speak too fast. So
I'm going to start off by talking about the Getting to Work initiative. I don't know if you all have heard about the Getting to Work initiative, but this initiative was a year-long capacity building project, and it was sponsored by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. The initiative was designed to increase Hopwood clients' income and minimize their reliance on social services and public benefits by increasing access to employment services. And they had pretty positive outcomes. So here we can see that 463 clients received employment services. 110 were able to obtain employment, whether that was full-time employment, part-time employment, or seasonal employment. And additionally, 79 new partnerships were built or enhanced with the community that assisted clients with apprentice programs, internships, or job opportunities. So we could see that clients were able to get employment, but we were also able to see that these agencies were able to collaborate or form partnerships with their community to continue to support their clients with getting employment or getting an internship or a volunteer opportunity. So the initiative had 5 lessons. So the first lesson that they had was vocationalizing, and this is pretty much for agencies who have any type of employment-related services. So pretty much with vocationalizing, it's integrating the employment-related expectations, practices, and service delivery. And again, this lesson is more focused for agencies who already provide any type of employment services within the agency. So some of you or some of your agencies may or may not have this service. If you don't have this service in terms of like employment services, then it's not something that you would be able to apply. But for those of you who do have any type of employment resources within your organization, it is something that you can integrate. The second lesson, it goes hand in hand with the vocationalizing, and that's having an employment specialist. So this person would implement the employment services program and ensure that the program sustains for a long-term period. So this would be someone who is working with the client specifically for employment. Again, if your agency does not have employment services, then it's not something that you'd be able to integrate. But if, let's say, your agency does, then having an employment specialist would be helpful in that sense, where the housing specialist won't necessarily be working with the client for employment, but they would refer them to the employment specialist. The third lesson was the intake and assessment. So we know that during the intake and assessment, staff can identify the client's willingness and readiness to work, and that's pretty much what this lesson was all about. Identifying the client's history of work, identify how ready or how, I guess, how encouraged they feel to get back into the work field. And doing so with the intake and assessment, you'd be able to identify that. The fourth lesson is interagency collaborations and partnerships. So this means building collaborations or any types of partnerships with workforce services for a client to engage, prepare, and have support when it comes to employment. And this is a really important step because it, as we talk about in the housing specialist training, certification training, right, one of the steps are referrals. And in order to do referrals, you need to also be aware of what agencies are out there in the community. And part of it is building those partnerships or collaborations. And so when we're looking at it in the employment perspective, sometimes it's a great way for us to know what's out there in the community in terms of what agency provides any type of employment services. So that way you can, you know, refer your clients to those agencies to access those services. And a lot of times those services would be at no cost to the client. And then the final lesson was knowledge on benefits. So for the Getting to Work initiative, this meant having an understanding of the impact of earned income on benefits to improve client motivation, right? And that's one thing that housing specialists have brought up in the housing training or other conversations that I've had with some of you, is that some clients are afraid of getting back into the work field because they're afraid of losing their benefits. And you know, we can't blame our clients for thinking that way. So it's important and to know, you know, kind of what the process would be like if they do get back into the work field, what would happen to their benefits. And so today, that's why I invited Gabby to kind of go over some information for you that you can share with your clients. But I always like to say that, you know, if you don't know the information, always refer them to a benefit specialist that would be able to provide them that information, and you know, avoid giving them any hopes or any, I don't want to say false information, but any misdirection. You can see here also that the last 3 lessons I have bolded. And this means that housing specialists can play an active role in these 3 lessons. I don't know if some of your agencies have employment services. If they do, you can integrate lessons 1 and 2. But for the most part, I know the housing specialist can implement steps 3, 4, and 5. So I'll be going over them in a little bit more detail. But for a lot of you, you're already doing all of this. So it's kind of going to be like a little refresher for some of you based on the housing specialist training if you've already participated in it. So lesson 3 was the intake and assessment. So housing specialists work with the client during the intake and assessment, and they also begin to build a relationship with their client. You get to learn about them. You get to learn about, you know, what's going on with their housing status. But also the more you get to know your client, the more you get to know how they feel about employment or their income, etc. So the housing specialist may engage the client to discuss their employment interests and what jobs they've had in the past, also what jobs they enjoyed, and if they would be interested in getting back into their old job. And the housing plan should be used to capture the client's objectives on the steps that they'll take to seek employment. So this could be, for example, let's say you discuss for the client to go to a job resource or agency. That could be added in the plan, right? So the client, in order for them to increase their income, the client mentioned that they will be going to Goodwill to access their employment services or the employment resources to be able to get back into the work field to get stable income, right? That information will show the client's progress in terms of being able to get their housing, but also being able to maintain it, right? So again, it'll track the client's progress, but it'll also show the CCA and our funders that our clients are taking an active role in increasing their income and having more stable income. I also had the opportunity to speak to Mireya Amador from Alliance for Housing and Healing. She was able to participate in the Getting to Work initiative, also with Maribel Uloa, that a lot of you know. And from our conversation, she shared that it's really important to engage our clients in the first 3 months of moving into their new place, as during that time, clients tend to be more motivated to get employment. And this can look like clients seeking a job that could be a part-time job or even volunteer. Some of our clients may be out of or may not have been working for a long time, and volunteering can be a great way to kind of get them back, you know, in the role of working. And so that's a really great opportunity to talk about with your clients, especially when they haven't been working for a long period of time. So the 4th lesson was interagency collaborations and partnerships. So we all know that building partnerships is a great way to support clients with employment, especially if the agency doesn't have any employment services. If housing specialists are aware of agencies that do provide employment services, then they can refer their clients to those agencies, where they will utilize a vocational assessment to determine the client's readiness to begin employment. So all of you have the intake assessment, right? So you're identifying the housing barriers, any needs that they have. Employment organizations, they use a vocational assessment, and that determines how ready the client is to get back to work. So that's just something to throw out there. I didn't know agencies did that, but I think that that's a really great way to kind of determine how they can assist their clients. So housing specialists will use the housing plan to follow up with the client to assess if they're meeting their employment objectives, right? So initially I gave the example we can write in the housing plan that the client has gone to Goodwill to access their employment resources services, but we want to follow up with the client and say, hey, I just want to check in with you to see how that went. Where are you at in that process? And depending on that response, you can add that into the housing plan, because again, that's what's going to show the client's progress, right? So here I added a list of agencies that offer employment services. And some of you may already be familiar with these agencies. If you know of any other agencies, please feel free to add them in the group chat. I always encourage all of you to share resources with each other, because some of you may know information that maybe others don't. So please share some of them if you don't see them on the list. So some of what I found was the Department of Rehabilitation. I also found the WorkSource Center, which I know a lot of you are very familiar with. I know APLA Health, the housing staff has flyers for the WorkSource Center available for their clients. Goodwill Career Services, JVS SoCal. There's also the Pacific Asian Consortium in Employment, also known as PACE, and the Good Seed. So all of you that were in the chair meeting last time and you saw me ask a question, can housing specialists refer clients to the Good Seed even if they're not actively like enrolled? That was me trying to get some information for all of you, and they said, yeah, you can refer clients even if they're not clients of the Good Seed, because they have employment services. So these are just some, but again, if you know of any others, please feel free to share. You can add it in the chat box. I'll be sending out a newsletter with this information as well, so that way you have it in your records. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the results from the initiative suggested that staff have an understanding of benefits, specifically on the impact of earned income that someone may have if they do become employed. And knowing this information can help minimize concerns that the client may have about the possible loss of benefits, and may help increase the client's motivation to seek employment that will give them more stable income. So now that we've begun talking about benefits, I'm going to hand it over to Gabby, who will provide you with the Benefits 101. The information that will be provided is very basic information about benefits, and although housing specialists play various roles while working with their clients, a referral should be made to a benefits specialist if the client does have specific questions. So I'll hand it over to Gabby. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat box, because now I'll be taking over the chat.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'll be reviewing some basic information about benefits programs that you may or may not be already familiar with. So some of the programs that I'll be going over are General Relief, Supplemental Security Income, Social Security Disability Insurance, Social Security Retirement, and one of the work incentive programs and reporting requirements. So overall, what is public benefits? Public benefits are programs that provide financial assistance to cover basic living expenses such as food, housing, healthcare, and other basic necessities. And keep in mind that there are multiple programs for individuals who are disabled or are veterans. Each program has a different eligibility requirement, such as age, income, veteran status, or employment status. So we'll be starting with General Relief, or GR, which we see among our clients, especially our homeless clients. GR is a program that provides financial assistance to individuals who are not eligible for federal or state programs and have very limited income. The maximum cash aid awarded is $221 per month to an eligible adult. So to be eligible, there are very strict limitations. For example, an individual must have limited cash on hand. Usually that's less than $50 on hand, limited assets, and must reside in LA County. So those who are eligible for GR will most likely be eligible for Medi-Cal and CalFresh. At the time of applying for GR, the Department of Public Social Services, or DPSS, will determine if the client is considered employable or unemployable. So if the client is deemed employable, it is mandatory that the client participate in another program within GR known as the General Relief Opportunities for Work or GROW program. So in the GROW program, clients that will receive GR for 9 months within a 12-month period, as long as they comply with requirements, which include actively looking for employment, and usually that's 20 hours in a week. But if the client is deemed unemployable because of a physical or mental disability, the client is not required to participate in the GROW program, and they just need their physician to sign off on paperwork. Ultimately, the goal of the GROW program is to transition participants in the labor market. So just like in the Getting to Work initiative, GR encourages clients to seek employment, which will help them earn more stable income. The more stable their income is, the more likely they're to maintain their housing. And just as a reminder, as Erica mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions and place them in the chat box. We'll respond at the end of the webinar. So we'll be moving forward with Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, and Social Security Disability Insurance, also known as SSDI, which are probably one of the most common forms of income that we see among our clients. Both of these programs are administered by the Social Security Administration Office and clients have to meet the same requirements to meet disability, or same definition to meet disability. However, both of these programs have different eligibility requirements. So SSI is a needs-based benefit that is paid to individuals who have limited income and limited assets. Those who receive SSI have not earned enough work credits. And when we think of work credits, we think in terms of their annual earnings or employment history. So someone who's on SSI will probably have little to no work history. But on the contrary, those who are on SSDI have paid into their benefits. So it is paid to disabled individuals who are under the age of 65 and who have had an extensive work history or have earned work credits. The amount they receive is based on their work history and is determined by the Social Security office. So as benefit specialists, we will get clients that come to us because they want to increase the amount that they receive on their SSDI, and that's something that is out of our control. We usually ask the clients to go back to Social Security to discuss that with them because they have access to their employment history. SSI and SSDI benefits can help clients with basic needs such as food, clothing, and utilities. However, it's important to keep in mind that clients seeking permanent housing may have trouble maintaining their housing if they only rely on these benefits. Working may provide a sense of fulfillment or purpose and gives clients the opportunities to be involved in the community. So for those clients who are interested in going back to work while receiving these benefits, it is important to note or to be aware of how their benefits will be affected. SSI benefits, for example, will be reduced based on their earned income. So the way that they determine how much a client will receive is based on the federal benefit rate, which is the maximum amount paid to an individual who is age, blind, or disabled. It is based on income limits and the maximum SSI payment. So for example, in California, the maximum a person can receive on SSI is $931.72. So if a client has earned income that exceeds that amount, they will no longer receive their benefit. And for those who are interested in working and are on SSDI, they also have limitations as well if they would like to return to work. So they cannot exceed or do what is considered substantial gainful activity. So the way substantial gainful activity is considered is employment income that is over 1,220. So if a client earns over 1,220, Social Security may deem them as no longer disabled and their SSDI will be terminated. So in order to prevent losing their benefits, clients are able to participate in a trial work period. And usually that trial work period is 9 months of employment within a 5-year period. There are numerous work incentive programs, but for the purpose of this webinar, We will not be reviewing each program. You can either find that information at the Social Security website, or ask your clients or encourage your clients to talk to the Social Security Administration office to get more information about that. Work incentive programs allow clients to continue to access public benefits, Medicare or Medi-Cal, and also they provide access to education, training, and rehabilitation programs. An example of one of the work incentive programs is the Ticket to Work program. So this program helps individuals who are currently receiving Social Security benefits, and it connects individuals with employment services that help them prepare, find, and maintain a job in order to ultimately become financially independent, which is the ultimate goal of the program. Clients may choose to work with an employment network or a vocational rehabilitation provider. And if the client feels that they are no longer able to work because of their disability, they may return and start receiving Social Security benefits again. So it's important that they stay in contact with whichever employment network or provider that they're working with.
And I want to add to this too, that the Ticket to Work program, I'm not sure if some of you have heard of this before, but some providers aren't aware that this program exists. And I'm sure that a lot of our clients don't know that it exists. And it really is a great program that helps get, our clients back on their feet with financial independence. And, some clients that are accessing the services may have shared with you that maybe they haven't worked in a while, or mostly they're afraid of losing their Social Security benefits due to employment. But like Gabby mentioned, if someone, isn't able to work anymore because of their disability, they can get their benefits again. So it's not that they're going to lose it completely and never get benefits anymore. They can get it again. So I did provide a link to the Social Security website, but I'll be providing the links to, for example, the Ticket to Work program and all that other information that Gabby will go over with the newsletter for June. So just a little heads up for that.
And to continue on, the Ticket to Work program is strictly for individuals who are receiving Social Security benefits. So it's going to be for individuals who are between the age of 18 to 65. And the program is free and voluntary. So you're not mandated to participate, unlike in the GROW program, where participants must participate. While clients are in the program, they are not required to have a continuing disability review, which is administered every few years to check if the person's disability has improved. So that's one of the benefits of participating in the program. And once again, it provides access to resources such as employment networks and rehabilitation programs. So it's also important to work closely with them. And if you're interested, or your clients are interested in learning more about this program, we recommend that you contact 1-866-TICKET, or go to the link as Erica mentioned that she'll be providing later on. So aside from SSI and SSDI, we may come across clients who are also receiving Social Security retirement benefits. Full retirement age is considered at 67 years old, and that may vary depending on what year the client was born in. So if they were born before 1960, that number or that age may be a little bit different. And usually clients who are on Social Security disability income, once they reach their retirement age, their benefits will roll over from SSDI to retirement automatically, and should expect to be receiving the same amount. Keep in mind, retirement age, once they reach retirement age, they're able to return to work, but clients are able to retire between the ages of 62 and 70. And Erica will provide a link of what the retirement age are.
And Laura, I just saw your question come in. So Laura's question is, can you please touch on how undocumented clients can benefit from any aspect of all of this, if at all? So Gabby, from my understanding, clients who are undocumented cannot access SSI or SSDI. And I can share from my experience, because I did work with a lot of clients who were undocumented and were looking for jobs. One thing that my manager once mentioned to me was asking the clients what kind of jobs they've had, if any. A lot of the clients that I did work with that were undocumented said that they worked in downtown. And so I would ask them if they still had great relationships with some of the employers of those stores, and some of them would say yes. And so I would ask them if they would be interested in maybe going back. So that was one way in which I was able to kind of motivate some of the clients that I had that were undocumented to get back into the work field. But I do see how this information, particularly, especially when we are touching on benefits, wouldn't really be as useful for clients who are undocumented. So maybe that's something that you can try out, Laura, with, or maybe with your team, maybe, checking into the work history that clients may have had, if any, in the past.
Thank you for your input, Erica. This is a challenge for us as well, because access to these public benefits are limited for our undocumented clients. But some clients may be eligible for a program called CAPI, and that's something that they would have to discuss with the Social Security office directly.
And I'm going to add to that a question, if you're able to answer. Would they be asking for any documents at all if they were to access CAPI?
I believe clients who are on CAPI have a work permit or have had a work permit, but we don't do the application in-house, so we always refer to the Social Security office.
And I can, when I find the link for CAPI, I can send that to you all, so that way you have it in your toolbox. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. And one of the things I just want to mention in the benefits department, we come across many clients who are retired but would like to return to work. Some clients inform us that it is difficult living on a fixed income, or sometimes we see clients who delay their retirement benefits until the age of 70 in order to increase the amount that they'll be receiving. Retiring early may result in a deduction of their benefits. So sometimes clients who are on SSDI think they may want to retire early because they believe they may get more. And we usually discourage that and recommend that they wait, because either way it will be the same benefit, but they may receive a lower amount if they retire before their full retirement age. For those clients who are retired and want to return to work, it's important to note that their benefits may be reduced as well. And we'll see that in this following chart here. Clients who are retired are able to return to work, but their limitations are different depending on what stage of retirement they are in. So in this chart, we'll see that we have prior to full retirement age, during full retirement age, during the year of full retirement age, and once they reach full retirement age. So in the maximum limit, that is the maximum that a client in that stage is allowed to earn, and below we'll see the deductions. So for example, if you retire before, let's say retirement age is 67, and a client that retires before that, they'll be deducted $1 for every $2 they earn over that $17,640 limit of earned income. And once these clients reach full retirement age, there's no limit to how much they can earn, and they will not be deducted any benefits. And I just want to touch on, once they do reach full retirement age, $1 for every $3 is deducted for anything earned over $46,920. Just to illustrate an example, we see here an individual who is 62 years old and is retired. So their annual retirement benefit is $7,200, and they're currently working, and their earned income is $22,600. So this individual is retired prior to full retirement age. So they've earned $4,960 over the maximum limit of $17,640. So therefore, $2,480 is withheld from their benefits, because as a reminder, $1 for every $2 that is earned over the limit is deducted from their retirement benefits. And I just want to note that it's really important to report any changes to income to the Social Security Administration office. Clients should be reporting their start and stop date for a job, any duty changes, any wage changes or hours worked, and also any work-related expenses as a result of their disability, because they may take that into consideration.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, with the information that I was able to get from Mireya, who's the program manager at Alliance for Housing and Healing, again, she mentioned that a great time to engage our clients to kind of look into working is within the first 3 months of getting housed. And it doesn't mean that the client is going to start working full time, right? As long as they get some type of income coming in that could be stable. It could be a full-time, it can be a part-time if they're starting off. It could be seasonal employment if they, if maybe they haven't been in the work field for a while. That's a good way to kind of get their feet wet. Also, volunteering is a great opportunity. I had a client who, he used to couch surf, and prior to him couch surfing, he actually used to volunteer at an agency. And when I first started working with him, he told me that he was going to have an interview with that agency, and that the person who was the volunteer coordinator actually was one of his references. And he was actually able to get the job. So that's just an example of how sometimes even with volunteering at agencies, if the opportunity comes up in the agency where, the client may potentially get a job, that's something that they can do as well. Also, the housing specialist works with the client to budget, right? So if you were able to participate in the income eligibility webinar, we discussed the importance of using income documents to budget with the client. Income documentation can help the client and the housing specialist set realistic objectives when it comes to increase of income. And during this conversation, it's important to set realistic objectives of how the client will be able to afford housing if benefits is the only source of income, right? So as Gabby mentioned, benefits are a great way of maybe helping the client with some like their personal stuff, like maybe hygiene stuff. But when it comes to housing and rent, $900 may not be enough. Right, so it's important to have those conversations with your clients, especially if they are seeking permanent housing. It's how will they be able to afford it if they're only making $900, right? Whereas they can make a little bit more if they have a more stable job. And it's okay to have those conversations with the client. I understand that sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable for some of us to have that conversation with them. But remember that being client-centered is not just focusing on not hurting our clients' feelings, but more of, hey, like, we want to make sure that you are stably housed and you're self-sufficient, and maybe the $900 won't be enough to be able to pay rent, right? So it's important to have those conversations with your clients. Also get to know any job resources in your community. The CHIRP meetings are a great opportunity to identify resources that are out there. I thought the Good Seed was a good organization, especially because they work with youth, but also because they have employment resources. So the more you know, the better, right? The more tools that you can add in your toolbox, the better it is for you and your clients. And then the work incentive programs can also minimize clients' concerns about losing all their benefits. With the program, some of them can still access benefits while working, such as Medi-Cal and Medicare. So those are also things that we could be aware of, but also we can share with our clients. And then, as I mentioned, referring our clients to a benefit specialist if needed, if they need more information. And then I saw a question come in, and you can start adding any questions if you have any. So Laura just shared with us. So I'm trying to make this bigger. Okay. So it's a challenge when clients don't have any form of documentation such as work permit, crew call status, etc. and there are no existing networks for getting paid under the table. Clients are more likely to connect their friends to a job that is under the table to avoid getting the owner in possible trouble. If an outsider or us as providers initiates the collaboration, I wonder if it would bring about fear or concerns that an investigation is undergoing. Yeah, so that's another challenge that providers will have when working with clients who are undocumented, especially when the conversations come up with employment. And I know for sure that was definitely a challenge for me when I used to do case management, but I know that I always ask my manager for everything. And one thing at the time, he wasn't aware of any type of resources that were out there for clients who are undocumented when it came to employment. So what he shared with me was what I just shared with you all previously, is asking the client, you know, maybe where they've worked in the past, how that went for them, if they would ever consider going back, or maybe like you, Laura just mentioned, maybe sometimes they'll have friends. But yeah, it is definitely a challenge. And sometimes when we bring up those conversations, there is that possibility of fear, right, of any type of investigations going on or anything like that. So, I mean, if any of you else that's in today's webinar, if you know of any resources that help out undocumented communities when it comes to employment, please share that. If you know any agencies that work with the undocumented community with any type of services, sometimes those organizations may have information as well that they can share with some individuals. So I would appreciate it. I don't know of any other resources. Gabby, I'm not sure if you know of any other resources for undocumented clients when it comes to employment or like benefits or anything like that.
It's really difficult. Really, if we have, let's say, mothers or parents who are undocumented, just be aware that their children should, if they're born in the United States, may be eligible for CalWORKS and CalFresh. So that may be something that clients are not aware of. So you may want to mention that to them. But as far as employment, that's a difficult subject.
Definitely. And also with housing with HOPWA, because we know that for the most part, the programs are federal funds. And so not all the housing programs would be able to assist our clients. I believe STRMU would be the only program that would assist clients when it comes to rent. But for example, like TBRA or PHP.
PHP, they would be eligible.
PHP, they would be eligible.
Yeah, it's just more of the, like the HUD, like TBRA Section 8, those programs are not eligible for.
So it can be quite challenging. And so I understand where the concern comes as providers, because we want to be advocates for our clients. But it's definitely one where I know as a provider, I used to have challenges. Gabby, I'm sure you have challenges.
I still have.
And I know for all of you logged in, I'm sure that all of you have faced this challenge. But again, anything that you're aware of, share it with each other. You're all working to help the community. And so I always say, you know, take the opportunities to share what you know, right? Any other questions? I'm going to give you all a minute just in case you're typing. I'm assuming we're all good. All right. So this concludes today's webinar. I hope that the information that was shared today was helpful for you all, especially when it comes to benefits, because that is a big one that comes up for a lot of you. Again, the benefits portion was very basic. It was more to provide you what the programs were, especially like the Ticket to Work program. Again, I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with that program. Some providers have mentioned that they didn't even know if it was still around. So if you were wondering if it was still around, it definitely is still around. I think that it's a great opportunity for clients to access it if they're able to. Also, the GROW program is another great program for clients who are receiving GR. Again, if the client does become employed and they're receiving benefits and maybe they start seeing less benefits come in or they lose their benefits, there is an opportunity for them to get their benefits again if they lose their job because of their disability. So that's just something to keep in mind for any clients who are afraid of never being able to access benefits again. So I will end the webinar here. Again, I will be sending you an email with the links that Gabby shared with you on and mentioned. And I will be posting this recording of this webinar in the Housing Specialist website. So I'll email you all once it becomes available. If you don't have any questions, I'll end it here. But I want to thank you all for participating today and being engaged with today's webinar. Thank you, everyone.